Hello and welcome back to another episode of ecoLEAD, where we bring you environmental research in easy to understand language. Today, we're diving into a topic that's both alarming and eye-opening, and it's about microplastics. Those tiny pesky particles are showing up in almost everywhere. In fact, they're showing up in unexpected places, including our bodies. So stick around as we talk more about this growing concern and what we can do to reduce our exposure. Microplastics are now everywhere, like I said. They've been found in different parts of the environment and even in different parts of our body. Recent studies have revealed that microplastics have been found in drinking water, human blood, and even placentas. But you wouldn't believe where a recent research actually found microplastics. Human and dog testicles. Yeah, you heard me right. Testicles. A study published a couple of weeks ago uncovered microplastics in the testicular tissues of humans and dogs. And as if that's not bad enough, while I was preparing for this podcast, researchers in China found microplastics in every sample of seminal fluids supplied by 36 male participants from inland China. So I think we would struggle to actually keep up with the pace of the alarming discovery. So permit me to just return to that research about microplastics in testicles of dogs and humans. So the researchers analyzed 23 human testicles and 47 dog testicles. And before you start asking, wait, how did they get the testicles? Did they run about chopping off people's balls? No, that was not what they did. They got the testicles from cadavers and then used established methods to break down the testicular tissue, leaving the microplastics behind for identification and analysis. And I understand that the process is a bit more complicated than what I've said, but I've just given you an overview and I understand that you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. So the results were startling. In the dog testicles, the weight of microplastics, if I'm to put it in context, would be equivalent to a grain of rice per 1 gram of tissue. So if the tissue that was collected is measured and it's about a gram, they got so much microplastics that you could equate to a grain of rice. But that's even not as alarming as what was found in humans. So for the humans, approximately 3 grains of rice was found per gram of testicular tissue. Would you believe that? Now, this is particularly even concerning because unlike dogs that don't mind eating from the ground and from dirty places, humans oftentimes try to eat from clean containers, and some people even put extra effort into avoiding exposure to plastics and other forms of pollutants. So it's a bit alarming that more microplastics were found in human testicles than in dog testicles. Also, they analyzed these results further and they realized that sexually active individuals, that's between the age of 22 and 45, had higher concentrations of microplastics in their testicles compared to the older individuals between 55 and 80 years. Now, the researchers proposed 2 possible explanations for this strange, if you like, observation. One is that the body might have a mechanism of, getting rid of these microplastics, such that the older people, you see less in their testicles because the process of getting rid of the microplastics may have gotten better over time and therefore got rid of more microplastics over time. That's the only way you can actually explain that. Except you're able to prove that people get less exposure as they get older. This is one possible explanation. The second explanation is that the higher energy demand of younger testicles might be attracting more microplastics. In other words, younger testicles seem to be magnets for microplastics because they are more active. You understand what I mean? They are more actively engaged in activities. Other research have actually shown that people aged between 18 to 29 are the busiest in the bedroom or wherever it is people get busy these days, with an average of 112 sex sessions in a year. That's about twice a week. People between 30 and 39 years are not far behind either, as they are having sex about 1.6 times a week or 86 times a year. So that extra demand of energy or use might be pulling in more microplastics. But these are two possible explanations. I think both of them are inconclusive at this point. Now, turning to the type of microplastics that were found. Polyethylene, PE, and polyvinyl chloride, which is PVC, were the most common microplastics found. Now, it is also interesting to know that these materials are widely used in food packaging and various consumer products, which can be an indication that the exposure route might be as a result of using plastics and plastic-containing materials. Now, whenever we talk about microplastics, one question we often get from people is, so what? Yes, microplastics have been found in the human brain and everywhere, but so what? After all, the health effects of microplastics in the human body are currently unknown, scientifically speaking, that is. Well, let's see if we can join a few dots that might make sense as far as this question is concerned. There has been a decline in sperm count among men at a faster rate around the world. And while scientists still don't fully understand what is responsible, there is a consensus among scientists that chemical pollution are largely responsible because of their potential for reproductive toxicity. Studies have shown a decline in sperm counts worldwide, with a 50% drop in places like America and other parts of the world over the past 50 years. So, this recent discovery of microplastics in strange places like semen and testicles might just be a pointer to the culprits, the actual reason behind this decline. But like I said, this is not conclusive yet. It's just a pointer because microplastics should not be in testicles for the first place. So if they're there, they might be doing something wrong. In fact, in another study in Italy, researchers found that samples of semen with the best quality sperm were also those where no microplastics were actually detected. So that's beginning to create a relationship between the presence of microplastics and the possible impact on the reduction in sperm counts. And also for people like myself who have been involved in research and studies that look at how the chemicals that are incorporated in microplastics can actually be released into the environment, this is not that much of a shocker to us because the things we already know are certain chemicals that are known to be harmful to human health. Some of them are even carcinogenic, are often incorporated in plastics during manufacture. We're talking about plasticizers, flame retardants, and all the other chemicals they use to form the plastics into specific features for specific use. Those chemicals we know are not good for the human health. But the question is, once in the plastic, do they find their way out to cause harm, or are they just trapped permanently in the plastics? Those are the kind of studies that are ongoing, so we can actually understand. Because if we can tell for sure that these chemicals are being released into the human body once plastics are in place, then we could conclusively say that microplastics are the culprits. Anyways, let's turn to the more optimistic place of this conversation by trying to see what individuals can do or what we can do to reduce or minimize our exposure. So I'd like to start though by saying that addressing this issue requires action at global and national level. So this is not me saying Bob in the pub or Jane in her lane can just flick a switch and voila, the plastic problem will disappear. No, that's not what I'm saying. This is me saying there are some practical steps you can take as an individual who just wants to either minimize exposure or maybe protect your children or family from this harm that we have identified. So number one, obviously, is to reduce your use of plastic. Where you can, reduce the use of plastics. It would be hypocritical of me to say, to tell you to stop using plastics. We're not quite there yet. You cannot eliminate it for now, but you can actually reduce where you can. So for example, if you want to use a toothbrush, you could use a bamboo toothbrush instead of a plastic one. Use materials that do not have microbeads, like those facial scrubs and all of the stuff that do not have microbeads in them. Just those little decisions that would help you to avoid them. And where possible, you can also use reusable material. So instead of buying new bags every time you go shopping, why not keep the bags and reuse them? That way you're minimizing how much of those things you're using. And where you can, store your food in all other containers. So all we're saying is for you to try as much as you can to minimize use of plastics. You cannot eliminate that for now. I'm using a mostly plastic microphone to record. I did most of my research in a mostly plastic computer sitting on a plastic fabric chair and all sorts of things. So it's not possible for us to totally avoid it for now, but we can minimize exposure where possible. Number 2 thing you can do, and many people are guilty of this, is if you can, do not microwave your food in plastic containers. This is because those chemicals that are incorporated in plastics, when you expose them to higher temperature, chances are that they become more volatile and it's easier for them to be released into your food. So where you can, use other containers to microwave your food so you don't get excessively exposed to those chemicals in the plastics. And number 3, try as much as you can to check your recycling code. Every time you use a plastic container, somewhere, most times it's underneath the plastic, you would see a recycling code, 36742. Each of these codes stand for something. They're telling you and give you an idea of the material from which the plastic is made. And just as a quick way of giving you a tip, avoid plastics that are labeled with codes 3, 6, and 7, as this most likely would contain phthalates or other chemicals that might be harmful. So where you must, you can stick to codes of 2, 4, and 5 where possible. Number 4 thing you can do is to recycle properly, follow recycling guidelines. Some things should not be thrown in your bin. They should be taken to a larger store to recycle. That's you trying to minimize how much of these plastics end up in our environment. It's like a cycle, right? You throw that plastic away. What goes around will eventually come around. Throw that piece of plastic away. It might end up in being washed into one water body, eaten by one fish. That same fish might end up in the market and you'll be the guy to buy it. So what goes around eventually comes around. So conclusively, the presence of microplastics in our bodies is a serious concern. But by taking small steps, we can actually reduce our exposure and contribute to a healthier planet or environment, depending on how you look at it. So the responsibility also lies with government and corporations to reduce plastic products and try to use sustainable materials as much as they can. But on your own part, these little actions would help you minimize your exposure. So thank you for tuning into this episode. I hope you found this session valuable and feel empowered to make changes in your daily life. Let's work together to combat the microplastics menace and protect our health and the planet. Stay informed, stay proactive, and let's make a difference together. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with others. Until next time, take care and stay green.